In 1863, black Americans owned less than 1% of all wealth in America. Banks wouldn't open accounts for them. Loan officers laughed them out the door. The entire financial system said one thing loud and clear: you are not welcome here. But here's the part nobody talks about. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't beg for a seat at the table. They built their own table. And what they created was so powerful, so profitable, and so threatening to the people in charge that it had to be destroyed by force. This is the story of how black Americans turned skills, sweat, and community into real wealth. When every door was locked, when every bank said no, when the law itself was designed to keep them poor. And what they built still holds lessons that most people today have never heard. Let's set the scene. After the Civil War ended, about 4 million people walked out of slavery with nothing. No money, no land, no education, and a country that didn't want them to succeed. Now you'd think the banking system would help. That's what banks are for, right? They take your money, they give you loans, they help you grow. But not if you were black. White banks either barred black people from walking in the door or denied every loan they asked for. If by some miracle you got approved, the interest rate was so high it was basically theft. And it gets worse. In 1865, Congress created the Freedmen's Savings Bank. It was supposed to be a safe place for newly freed people to save their money. Over 67,000 people trusted that bank with their hard-earned wages and military payments. But the bank's white directors took that money and gambled it away on risky investments. Most of those loans went to white businessmen connected to the bank's own leaders. The money of black depositors was used to build wealth for the very people who kept them out of other banks. When the bank collapsed in 1874, thousands of families lost everything. Frederick Douglass himself became the bank's last president. But even he couldn't save it. He later described the experience as being married to a corpse. That betrayal echoed for generations. Even during the Great Depression, descendants of those depositors wrote letters to President Roosevelt, asking if they could finally get their grandmother's money back. They never did. So when people ask why black communities didn't just use the banking system to build wealth, now you know the answer. The system wasn't broken. It was built that way on purpose. But here's where the story takes a turn that changes everything. Because when the banks said no, black Americans said, fine, we'll do it ourselves. And the tool they used wasn't money, it was skill. Think about this. If nobody will give you a loan, what do you have left? Your hands, your brain, your ability to do something that other people need done, and that's exactly what happened. Across the South, in the growing cities of the North, black men and women turned skills into survival. Blacksmiths, carpenters, tailors, barbers, bricklayers, seamstresses, shoemakers, cooks. These weren't just jobs. These were businesses built from nothing but talent and hustle. No bank loan required. Communities created what historians call mutual aid networks. Families pooled their nickels and dimes together. Churches became the first credit unions. Neighbors lent to neighbors. And every dollar earned was spent inside the community, again and again. In some places, a single dollar would change hands 19 times before it ever left the neighborhood. Let me say that again, 19 times. That's not just spending. That's an entire economy running on trust and skill. And nobody needed a banker's permission to make it work. Now, if you think that's impressive, wait until you hear what happened next. Because one woman took this idea of skill-based wealth and turned it into something the world had never seen before. Her name was Sarah Breedlove, born in 1867 on a Louisiana plantation. Her parents were former slaves. She was orphaned by age 7, married at 14, a widow by 20, working as a laundress for barely enough to eat. She had no education, no connections, no money, but she had a problem. Her hair was falling out from years of harsh conditions, bad products, and stress. And there was nothing on the market made for black women's hair. Nobody was making products for them. Nobody cared. So she started experimenting in her kitchen, mixing homemade treatments, testing them on herself and her friends. And she found something that worked. With $1.25, she started selling her hair formula door to door. She renamed herself Madam C.J. Walker. And within a few years, she didn't just start a company, she built an empire. A factory, a beauty school, a laboratory, a nationwide network of sales agents. Over 20,000 women, almost all of them black, trained and employed through her system. Earning real money, building real independence. By the time she passed in 1919, Madam Walker was worth somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. She was the first female self-made millionaire in American history, black or white. And she did it without a single bank loan. She once said, I got my start by giving myself a start. That one line tells you everything about how black wealth was built during this era. Nobody gave it to them. They created it from skill, effort, and sheer will. And Madam Walker didn't keep it for herself. She donated to schools, churches, and civil rights groups. She funded scholarships. She fought against racial violence. She used her money to lift others the same way she lifted herself. But she wasn't the only one. Because while Madam Walker was building her empire, something even bigger was happening in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Something that proves just how far skill and community can take you when the system shuts you out. It was called the Greenwood District, but most people know it by its other name, Black Wall Street. In the early 1900s, a man named O.W. Gurley moved to Tulsa. He was born to formerly enslaved parents. He bought land. He built a grocery store, then boarding houses. Then he started selling plots of land to other black families at fair prices. And from that simple beginning, a city within a city was born. By 1921, the Greenwood District had over 300 black-owned businesses: banks, hotels, movie theaters, grocery stores, doctors' offices, law firms, a newspaper, even a private airport. The community had 15 physicians, 6 real estate agents, 4 pharmacists, 3 lawyers, 2 dentists, 10 tailors, 5 building contractors, 12 barbers. Every one of them black. Every business owned and operated by people the rest of the country refused to serve. Booker T. Washington visited and gave it the name that stuck: Black Wall Street. A dollar spent in Greenwood circulated inside the community over and over before it ever left. The wealth stayed, the jobs stayed, the power stayed. This wasn't charity. This was an economy built on skills, trust, and the simple decision to invest in each other. Several millionaires came out of Greenwood. O.W. Gurley's net worth reached somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. That's between $7 and $14 million in today's money. All built without access to white banks, all built on skill and community. But here's the part of this story that still makes people angry. On May 31st, 1921, a white mob attacked Greenwood. Over 2 days, they burned 35 square blocks to the ground. They destroyed over 1,000 homes, killed as many as 300 people, left nearly 10,000 homeless. One of the only times in American history that a domestic population was attacked from the air. Planes dropped fire on black homes and businesses, and nobody was ever held accountable. The wealth that took decades to build was wiped out in 48 hours. But even that wasn't the end, because within 1 year, Greenwood survivors rebuilt 80 businesses. Without government help, without insurance payouts, without white banks. They did it the same way they built it the first time, with their hands, their skills, and each other. Now here's why this story matters right now, today. Because the lesson of Black Wall Street and Madam Walker and the mutual aid networks isn't just history, it's a blueprint. When the system locks you out, skill is the one thing nobody can take from you. Think about it. A bank can deny your loan, a company can fire you, the economy can crash, the government can change the rules overnight. But if you know how to build something, fix something, create something, teach something that lives inside you, and nobody can repossess your ability. What black Americans proved during the hardest period in this country's history is something most people still haven't learned. Real wealth doesn't start with money, it starts with what you can do. Money is a tool, skill is the engine, and community? Community is the multiplier. When those dollars circulated 19 times through Greenwood, it wasn't magic. It was people choosing to invest in each other's skills. The barber spent money at the grocery store. The grocer spent money at the tailor. The tailor spent money at the doctor. Round and round it went. That cycle created more wealth than any bank ever could. Now, before I wrap up, I want to be clear. This video is educational content based on historical facts and publicly available information. I'm sharing my perspective on what happened and what we can learn from it. Nothing in this video is financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, and you should always do your own research before making any financial decisions. Here's what I'll leave you with. The story of how black Americans built wealth through skill is one of the most powerful stories in economic history, and most people have never heard it. They didn't wait for the system to change. They built around it. They turned closed doors into open roads, and they proved that when skill meets community, almost nothing can stop you. The bank said no. History said otherwise. If this video taught you something new, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next one.